Kevin Reed. Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to a super speed edition of Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. And happy Father's Day. It is Father's Day weekend at the time of this episode's release. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers who are listening. Hope you enjoy your pack of socks and your ties that you get this Sunday. And happy Juneteenth, which is this upcoming Monday, and happy Flash weekend, because this weekend on June the 16th, which is ironically the day of this episode's release, we are getting the first theatrical solo film from the DC Comics super speedster, The Flash, which stars Ezra Miller as Barry Allen / The Flash, Sasha Calle as Supergirl, Michael Shannon as General Zod, Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne, also known as Batman, and Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne, also known as Batman. This is an exciting film, a film that I have been anticipating for a long time. Super excited because I am a huge fan of this character from the DC Comics. This is a character that I read over and over again. I love DC Comics. I love Superman, love Batman, love the Flash, love the Justice League, love all of the DC characters. Well, to be honest, I love all comic book characters, not excluding Marvel. Love Marvel as well, but DC was my jam. I would go to DC more often than I would go to Marvel. Outside of the X-Men and Spider-Man and some of the Avengers comic runs, I really didn't just read all of the Marvel comics. Every now and then I'll get caught up in, a big storyline like Civil War or, the Infinity Saga and stuff like that. But when it came to DC, I just read them. I didn't care about the storyline. I loved all of the characters. Mainly because my favorite character is, of course, Batman. In case you didn't know, Batman is my all-time favorite superhero, comic book character, just person. So I always gravitated to DC. And the Flash comics was a comic book that, for me, personally, it was easier to digest. For some strange reason, I just loved the Flash. The way it was written and drawn. It was just something about the Flash comics that I just love watching. I love reading, and it was just enjoyable. It was an enjoyable run of comics, the Flash comics. But all of them I enjoyed. I don't want to just single out the Flash or be a prisoner of the moment because the Flash is the bee's knees right now. But it was just something about the Flash that I gravitated to. Maybe it was a power that I just wanted. I wanted to go fast. Who don't want to go fast? Who doesn't want to run at super speed? And it was so much more to his ability. He can run fast enough to manipulate time. He could manipulate his body, vibrate his body to the point he can get out of certain situations. I just loved it. And he was smart. He's a scientist. And so all that wrapped up in it, and I just love that character. Always, always. I don't care if it was Jay Garrett or Barry Allen or Wally West. It didn't matter. I love the Flash. And so, of course, I had to do an episode today dedicated to the character, the Flash, in anticipation of this new film that is coming out. And it's a film that I've been trying with every fiber in my being not to get uber excited for, but I can't help it. I just cannot help it. Uh, I take you back to last week, like with Transformers. Me being a big Transformers fan, right? I managed to temper my expectations for Transformers: Rise of the Beast, and in doing so, I went to see the film and I completely enjoyed it because I had zero expectations for it, and it benefited. My viewing benefited from it. I don't know if the review reflected that or not, but uh, once again, that's just my opinion. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. But when we come to the Flash, which if you can't tell by now, I haven't seen yet, and it's making me mad that I haven't seen it yet. At least the time of this recording, we're only what's today? We're only about 4 days out before it is officially released in theaters, and I'm going to see it on that fourth day. And as soon as the theater opens, I'm going to see it. But it's really hard for me to temper my expectations for a lot of reasons. One, like I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of this character. And also, as I mentioned before, I'm a huge fan of another character that is in this movie, Batman. But in this film, we're not just getting one Batman, we're getting two. And two of arguably the best Batmen to ever grace the silver screen. Ben Affleck, yes, Ben Affleck, because a lot of people poo-poo on Ben Affleck, and I remember the internet blew up when he was announced to have been cast in Batman v Superman as Bruce Wayne, but he made a lot of people just eat crow when when that movie came out, and I think he did an excellent job as the character of Batman, but he wasn't the greatest. The greatest is still the undisputed heavyweight champion of Batman, Michael Keaton, the OG from 1989. He is, in my opinion, the greatest actor to play Batman in live action. I want to put that little asterisk by it because Kevin Conroy, God rest his soul, he was the best. He did the voice of Batman in the animated series and all of the animated films that came out after. He was the best because his voice just radiated Bruce Wayne, Batman. It was beautiful, and he is sorely missed, man. He passed away last year, and I think he was the greatest as far as voice wise. But in live action form, it was Michael Keaton, and he is returning after 34 years of first putting on the cape and the cowl. He is returning in the role. And at first, when they said this, I was like, it was, as much as I love Michael Keaton, I'm like, I mean, he's up there, Michael Keaton's in his 60s, maybe he may be hitting 70. I don't know how old Michael Keaton is, but I'm like, man, really? But as soon as I saw the pictures, not the trailer, when I saw the pictures that was leaked online of him on the set and all this here, I was like, yep, yep, give me that. And so, in dedication to this film, we're not going to review one, but we're going to review two films today. The first film we're going to review is Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox, which is an animated film that was direct to video. It was released in 2013, and it is an adaptation of a comic book storyline, Flashpoint, that had a lot of implications in the DC comics, spawned off from this storyline in the comics. So they made the movie, and a lot of that storyline is going to be used in this Flash film, this live action film that comes out today. Not a direct adaptation, but there are elements of it. And so we're going to review that film, as well as, since after 34 years, Michael Keaton returns to the role that he has owned for 3 decades. We're going to review that very film. a film that I have been highly anticipating to review on this show ever since I started this podcast. This is the film that changed my life forever. It is none other than the 1989 Tim Burton directed, Michael Keaton starring Batman. Ooh, I can't wait for this. But before we jump into some Batman and all that there, it's funny how Batman just engulfs the conversation. But today, we're not here just for Batman. The main purpose of this show, or the main subject of this show today, is the character of the Flash. And the Flash, as I said before, is one of DC's most popular and, dare I say, powerful characters. And he has had multiple iterations. Even though this film that's coming out today is the first theatrical solo film from the Flash, we've gotten a lot of Flash in popular culture. We've gotten a couple of TV shows about the Flash, and multiple characters have played this character, or multiple actors have played this character, should I say. And we're going to go into the history of the Flash. Then we'll discuss some of this character's influence on pop culture. And then we're going to get into our reviews. And so that's going to be the order of service today. So let's start off with the history of the Flash. Let's start off with a little introduction, should I say. 3 men has held the title of the fastest man alive. That'll be Jay Garrett. Most popular one is Barry Allen, of course, and Wally West. Each of them redefined the word hero. The mysterious power known as the Speed Force is an energy field that has, over centuries, granted incredible power of velocity to certain heroes. The most famous of these is the Flash, also known as the fastest man alive. Ever since the days of World War II, there has been a man clad in red who can run at incredible speeds, using his power to save lives and defend those who cannot defend themselves, all between the ticks of a second. In the 1940s, college student Jay Garrett acquired his super speed abilities in a random lab accident and became the first DC superhero to go by the name The Flash. Years later, Jay was succeeded by police scientist Barry Allen, until Barry's former kid partner Wally West took up the mantle at a time when Barry, in the comics, was considered dead. But when Barry returned, he became the Flash once again. All 3 generations of speedsters have been cornerstone members of both the Justice Society and the Justice League. The Flash has mastery over not only speed, but time itself. And he has often used his powers to travel through different eras and even other dimensions. Although the Flash is not always been fast enough to outrun personal tragedies when it comes to him, he's always done the best to prevent the same from happening to the people of Central City and Keystone City. In doing so, he earned himself a spot among the greatest superheroes the DC universe has ever known. Created by writer Gardner Fox and artist Harry Lampert, the original Flash first appeared in Flash Comics #1, cover date January 1940, release month November 1939. Nicknamed the Scarlet Speedster, all incarnations of the Flash possess super speed, which includes the ability to run, move, and think extremely fast, also using superhuman reflexes and seemingly violate certain laws of physics. Like I said before, the Flash is one of DC Comics' most popular characters and has been integrated in the publisher's most reality-changing crisis storylines over the years. The original meeting of the Golden Age Flash, Jay Garrick, and Silver Age Flash, Barry Allen in Flashes of Two Earths in 1961 introduced the multiverse storytelling concept to DC readers, which would become the basis of many DC storylines in the years to come. A staple of the comic book DC universe, The Flash has been adapted in numerous DC films, video games, animated series, and live action television shows. In live action, Barry Allen is, or has, should I say, been portrayed by Rod Haas for the 1979 television special Legends of Superheroes. In 1990, John Wesley Shipp starred as Barry Allen in the Flash series, and as recent as 2014, the CW show that recently just ended, last month, Grant Gust portrayed Barry Allen in the Flash, and of course, aforementioned Ezra Miller in the DC Extended Universe, where he first appeared as in a cameo and Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, also Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and the upcoming Flash film that is currently in theaters. The various incarnations of the Flash also is featured in animated series such as Superman, the animated series, Justice League, Batman, the Brave and the Bold, and Young Justice, as well as the DC Universe animated original movie series, in which one of them we're going to review today, which is Justice League, the Flashpoint Paradox. But before we get to that, let's go back to the year 1990. And CBS decided to jump into the superhero business. They wanted to make a TV show about the Flash. And this comes from the writing team of Danny Bilson and Paul DeMaio. And this show, aptly titled The Flash, aired on CBS from September 20th, 1990 to May 18th, 1991. Only lasted one season. But it was based on the DC's comics character of Barry Allen, aka The Flash, and it starred John Wesley Shipp as Barry Allen. And this was a show that I was just all in on, you know what I'm saying, when it came on because we're fresh off the heels of Batman, which was released in theaters the year prior to that, and with the success of that movie, you know how well it did in the box office, because prior to that, comic book movies, superhero movies were a joke. They were an absolute joke, and nobody took it seriously. It didn't make any money. Studios weren't making them. See, like now, you look at movies now, how they're released, you get about 4 or 5 comic book movies a year, you know. So just imagine back in the 80s and 90s, you may, if you combine those 2 decades, you may have gotten 4 or 5 out of those 2 decades. You know, that's how sparingly we got superhero content because of the quality. Honestly, there was some bad films up until Batman. And even after Batman for a little while in the 90s, it was bad. It was really, really bad. We got some just monstrosity of superhero films. But as far as television is concerned, really didn't have much content as far as superhero shows. You look on TV now, like the CW, well, not so much on the CW anymore because all those shows have been canceled, but they had the Arrowverse, you know. They had, of course, they had a Flash TV show. They had Arrow. It was Supergirl. There was it Legends of Tomorrow? They had Batwoman, which was, you know, all those superhero shows were on that one channel now. You know, you go on Disney Plus and they have WandaVision and Loki, and you know, you got Secret Invasion coming up and all these other superhero shows, but that didn't exist then. But in 1990, CBS took a chance and it didn't pan out because it only lasted one season. And the reason I feel they deviated a lot from the comics, I mean a lot, It wasn't exciting to watch. Uh, somebody running super speed, but it wasn't. How can I describe it? I don't know. It was 1990. That's how I can describe it. That's the best way I can describe it. It was 1990, and it just didn't work. Uh, the premise of the 1990s TV show The Flash: Barry Allen, a forensic scientist working for the Central City Police, is struck by lightning and doused in chemicals in his lab. He develops super speed and creates a superhero identity for himself to fight crime. The Flash. Research scientist Dr. Tina McGee works at Star Labs and helps Barry fight crime while trying to understand how his powers are developing, as well as his superheroics. Barry tries to maintain a private life and tries to keep his superhero identity from his colleagues, such as his boss, Lieutenant Garfield, and his best friend, Jose Mendez. It was there were some real deviations from the comics in this show that I remember. It's been so long since I've seen it, but I think in this show, his mother is alive. Uh, his dad was a cop. They didn't have a good relationship, and it was just a, I don't know. It didn't work. It's storyline wise, it was good for a little 12-year-old kid named Kevin Reed to watch because you can see superheroes on TV. But the story, going story wise, it didn't really connect with me. But they had a lot of guest stars, a lot of guest characters, I guess you could say, that were from the comics. You had Prank, some of his roles gallery. You had Nightshade, you had Mirror Master, Captain Cold, but the main one, which gravitated me to the show even more, which I love the episodes this character appeared on, the Trickster, and the Trickster here is played by Mark Hamill. Yes, Luke Skywalker. Or you may know him as the voice of the Joker in all of the animated TV shows and movies. He provided the voice of Joker. And I think Trickster was a precursor to his Joker portrayal in those animated features and stuff. And you can see it because the Trickster in this show, he was more of the Joker than anything. He was a Joker, but it was fun to watch. And of course, it was the 90s, so you had a lot of neon colors, and it was just wow. But it was an interesting show for however long it lasted. That one glorious season on CBS. I think I saw it on Max. That it was available on Max. I never watched it, but I saw that it was on available. This was a while back, so if you go on there now and can't find it, don't call me a lie. I know it was at one time available on Max, but in any event, yeah, that was the first, I guess you could say, live action, other than that 1979 TV movie that I didn't watch because I wasn't born until 1979. And so I probably did watch it, just don't know it. I was sitting in my little crib or whatever, however it was set up over there at Reed Manor. But in any event, yes, the 1990 Flash, which starred John Wesley Shipp, but this wasn't his last encounter with the Flash, because we fast forward to 2014 and the CW, as I mentioned before, decided to have a little cinematic universe, if you will, with the Arrowverse, all of these shows that spawned from Arrow, and one of them was The Flash. And this show was developed by Greg Berlanti and Jeff Johns, and it aired on the CW after it had gotten a backdoor pilot on Arrow. Arrow introduced Barry Allen as a friend of Felicity Snoke. For those of you who know what the Arrowverse was and watch those shows, Felicity Snoke is Arrow's, or Oliver Queen's, fiance and not adversary, but his assistant or whatever she was. I can't even remember now. But anyways, yeah, we got introduced to Barry Allen, and through that show, he got his powers and blah blah blah. So that episode was so well received, they gave him his own show, and Barry Allen was portrayed by Grant Gustin, and The Flash premiered on October the 7th, 2014, and it ran for yes, 9 seasons up until May 24th. Yes, just a couple of weeks ago, 2023. The series follows Barry Allen, portrayed by Grant Gustin, a crime scene investigator who gains superhuman speed, which he uses to fight criminals along with others who had also gained superhero abilities. I love The Flash. Those first 5 seasons, maybe six. And so I love that. I loved it, especially that first season of The Flash goes down as probably one of the greatest superhero shows that the CW has ever put together. Honestly, that first season of The Flash was perfect. I mean, perfect. And it kind of went downhill from there. I mean, the first season was so good. You know, you just wish. It's like taking that. It's like getting that first high. At least I heard. When you get that first high, you keep chasing that high because you want to get that same high, but you never can get it. So you keep trying and trying. That's how you become a addict. Once again, so I heard. And so that first season was so excellent, and they just couldn't get there. It was good. It was still good, but it had got kind of ridiculous. Everybody started getting powers, you know. I mean, everybody, the whole cast, everybody on that show at one point had a superpower, or super speed, or some super ability in one shape, form, or another. It got ridiculous, and after they did the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, where they crossed over all the shows on the CW, I checked out. I checked out, and I think that was about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years. I can't even remember now, because I was so disappointed with that, and it just could not recover from there. And I didn't watch The Flash after that. I didn't watch any of them after that because I was a big fan of all of them. League of the Legends of Tomorrow. I loved it. I loved that show, and then it just went down. And Supergirl started off strong, but it kind of went down. And The Flash just suffered. I think it went on 3, maybe 4 years too long, but it's to be commended that it lasted for 9 seasons. 9 seasons is a long run from 2014 to 2023. That's a long run in today's era of television. If you're lucky to get 2, maybe 3 seasons out of a show, and this got 9, and that's to be commended. And I think Grant Gustin did an excellent job as Barry Allen. I loved him in this role. I really do. And to the point, everybody loved him, and everybody wanted him to portray the Flash in the films, and it just didn't happen. Actually, funny enough, in case people never watched it, I think was it Crisis on Infinite Earth, that episode when Ezra Miller appeared on the show as the Flash. They had, because they were crossing multiverses and stuff, and they ran into each other, and it was the best part of Crisis on Infinite Earth. That was the only part where I enjoyed it, because they actually crossed over the films with the shows, and because they were separated, they did their thing, movies did their thing. And so when they crossed over with that, I thought it was epic. I thought that was the most epic moment, one of the most epic moments in television, when Ezra Miller appeared as the Flash, standing right across from Grant Gustin as the Flash. That was awesome. And from there, that was a wrap. That was it for me. And so, yeah, I really did it. I did enjoy it for a good while, but like most things, it eventually jumped the shark, and it jumped the shark for me about 3 years ago. But speaking of that epic moment with Ezra Miller, Ezra Miller, I know all the stuff that he has been accused of in the past few years, and is unexcusable, and I'm not excusing none of that. But it's one thing I do like about Ezra Miller, and it's the fact that they have no problem, jumping on TV. They did that cameo on the Flash TV show. Uh, Ezra Miller has appeared as the Flash a lot. He's done it a lot. Like I said, he was in Batman v Superman for a second. He was in not Justice. Well, he was in Justice League, but he was in Suicide Squad for a second. That first Suicide Squad with Will Smith and all that. Not the bad one, not the good one. And he also Peacemaker, that Max series with John Cena as Peacemaker. He appeared on that along with Jason Momoa as Aquaman. But it was funny to see them in that show for that quick little cameo. But he has no problems being in cameos of this character. Uh, I like him as this character. I really do. I know, like I said, the stuff that he's done, inexcusable. But I cannot erase the fact that he is perfect in the role as Barry Allen. He's done an excellent job in this role. He gets it. Just like Michael Keaton understood the assignment, Ezra Miller understands the assignment. So, you know, shoot me. Well, no, don't shoot me, people. But it was good. But the Flash is a very unique character. His power set, he has super speed, uh, intangibility, superhuman ability, time travel. He can create and control lightning, and he has multiversal knowledge, which means he is surpassed the genius. And he's one of the funniest characters in all of comics, not just in DC, but in all of comics. He's a very entertaining character and visually one of the most exciting to look at. So let's get into our reviews, everybody. We have two films to review, and our first one is an animated film from 2013. It is a direct-to-video animated superhero film entitled Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox. This film is directed by Jay Olivier. It is written by Jim Craig, and it is an adaptation of the 2011 comic book crossover Flashpoint by Jeff Johns. The film stars Justin Chambers as Barry Allen the Flash, C. Thomas Howell as Edenball Thong, Professor Zoom, Michael B. Jordan, everybody. He voiced Victor Stone, aka Cyborg, and Kevin Mckidd as Thomas Wayne, aka Batman. You also have the voice talents of Kevin Conroy, rest in peace, as Bruce Wayne Batman, Nathan Fillion as Hal Jordan, also known as Green Lantern, Ron Perlman as Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke. We just heard Ron Perlman as Optimus Primal in Transformers Rise of the Beast, Dana Delaney as Lois Lane, Vanessa Marshall as Princess Diana, aka Wonder Woman, and D. Bradley Baker as Etrigan. This is the 18th film in the DC Universe animated original movies, and the first film of DC animated movie universe. Yes, there was a cinematic animated universe that just ended, actually, I think last year or the year before last, with Apocalypse War, if I'm not mistaken, and that was epic. That was epic. I'm actually gonna review that one day. I had already put in my mind, but it is the whole cinematic universe of these animated films from DC is epic, and that's part of the reason why you get frustrated with the DCU, with the Batman v Superman's, Justice League, that Suicide film, the Suicide Squad film. It was, why can't y'all be like the animated movie? Because the animated movies clap. I'm telling you, they were epic. But anyway, I digress. One of the epic ones is indeed this film, Justice League, The Flashpoint Paradox. As I said before, it is an adaptation of the 2011 storyline, Flashpoint. And Flashpoint changed DC because Flashpoint in the comics is how we got the new 52s. You know, after Barry Allen went back in time and did what he did. And this movie is very condensed. You know, if it was a knock, it was the fact that this movie is very condensed as far as that, you know, with that storyline. And I know you couldn't do it any other way unless you do it in like a limited run series, you know, a few episodes, maybe about 10 episodes to really do it justice. But to fit it into an 81-minute movie was kind of impossible. And they really did took liberties, but at the same time, they kept the core of the story. And basically, just like in the comics, we're not going to go too far into this film because this may have some story elements that's in the actual Flash film that is out right now. So I don't want to spoil any of y'all, and I especially don't want to spoil me. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, even though I do know the story. But the movie is not, like I said, an adaptation of this storyline, but it may have elements here or there that pop up in that movie. But the Cliff Note version is Barry Allen. He goes back in time to save his mother, stop his mother from being murdered. And he does it. You know, he does it. He wakes up the next morning and he doesn't remember doing it, but he wakes up the next morning and he doesn't have his powers. Nobody knows who the Flash is. And his mother is alive. His mother is alive, but he's changed. He's not the Flash anymore. But that's all right because he has his mom back. I get it. But his dad is dead now. You know, his dad had died of a heart attack. And so it was like he traded off parents due to this. And there's no Flash. There's no Justice League. They didn't assemble because of his messing with the timeline. His wife was married. And I know that sounds crazy. Yeah, it's his wife. He's married to her. No, she was married to somebody else. So that was that. The Atlanteans and the Amazons are beefing. They're at war, and their war is tearing the world apart because you got to realize these are gods going at war. You know, they're tearing the world apart, which means if this war keeps going on, they're going to destroy the planet. You know, because the Atlanteans, led by Aquaman, is flooding territories, not cities and stuff. They're flooding countries and continents, you know, in retaliation to the Amazons. And it all started because Wonder Woman killed Aquaman's wife, Mira. After Mira found out that Aquaman and Wonder Woman were getting a little kinky on the side. So that kicked off a war, all because Aquaman couldn't keep his fish in his pants. That's what's gonna destroy the world. And so that's happening. So now Barry is tripping out. So now he has to figure out how to fix this. He needs to figure out how to get his powers back. So he goes to Gotham City to consult with the smartest person he knows, Batman. And so he gets to Gotham City. He goes into the Batcave and he's looking for Bruce. And all of a sudden Batman pops up and starts beating him half to death. And Barry just screams out, Bruce. You know, he's like, Bruce. And And so so Batman says, "How do you know that name?" You know, just like in Batman v Superman with Martha. But Batman was like, "How do you know that name?" He's like, "That's your name." He's like, "No, that's my son's name." And at that moment, you realize this isn't Bruce Wayne. This is Thomas Wayne. Thomas is alive in this timeline, and he became Batman. The reason he became Batman is because Bruce was the one that got murdered in the alley, not him and Martha. They both survived, and that drove him to become Batman. But in another epic twist, it drove Martha insane, and she became the Joker. And so in this timeline, Thomas Wayne is Batman, Bruce Wayne is dead, and Martha Wayne is the Joker. All because Barry went back in time to save his mother. This was an exciting film to watch, to actually see this storyline played out in motion, you know, as opposed to reading it in a comic book, flipping pages. But this was a good, real good adaptation of that storyline. As I said, a lot was condensed, a lot was left out because the comic run, I think, were like 24 issues, if I'm not mistaken. I know it was a lot. It was a lot. I remember that much. But they still did an excellent job of telling this story, and it hit the points from the comics that they needed to hit. And this was a very, very good film. Deeply enjoyed it, as I did with all of DC animated films around this time, especially in this cinematic universe. The ending, if you don't tear up at the end, you don't have a soul. At the end of this movie and in the storyline in the comics, you don't have a soul. If you don't tear up at the end of it, I won't spoil it for anybody in case you haven't seen it. If you have, you know what I'm talking about. But Justice League, the Flashpoint Paradox, gets a letter grade of an A. I loved this movie. It is so fun. All of the voice actors did an excellent job. Justin Chambers, who I didn't know voiced Barry until after the movie was over. I saw the credits. I'm like, wait, ain't that the dude from Grey's Anatomy? He's the voice. I didn't see that. Didn't see that coming. Michael B. Jordan as Cyclops as Cyborg. I was like, man, that's cool. Go ahead on, Michael B. You know, but the standout in this film was Kevin Mckidd, who also was on Grey's Anatomy. I guess they just went on set and said, who want to do a voice for this movie? But Kevin Mckidd as Thomas Wayne, you felt the pain in his voice. You know what I'm saying? That through that performance, you felt the pain of Thomas Wayne and the desperation to help Barry fix things in order for his son to survive in a timeline, even though that meant him not surviving. Whew, that is beautiful, man. You felt it through that performance. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Great job by all of these actors in their roles. Justice League, the Flashpoint Paradox, 8. All right, everybody. All right. The moment that I've all been waiting for. The movie I've been waiting to review for a long time is none other than the 1989 superhero film based on a DC Comics character of the same name, created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, Batman, directed by Tim Burton, starring Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, Kim Basinger, Robert Wall, Billy D. Williams, and Jack Palance. And this movie takes place early in the Batman war on crime and depicts his conflict with his arch enemy, the Joker. Development for this Batman film goes all the way back to the 70s. They've been trying to make a Batman movie for so long, especially after the success of Superman the movie from 1978, directed by Richard Donner, starring the late great, should I say, Christopher Reeves as Superman. And so they were trying to get a Batman movie off the ground too. But around that time, they were really leaning towards the campy, 1960s Batman, which starred Adam West and Burt Ward, So they were trying to go that route with it. And it never quite got off the ground. I know at one point CBS was interested in producing a Batman in outer space movie. This was in the 70s now. But in October of 1979, producer Michael E. Ursulin, he had purchased the film rights for Batman, and he still owns them. His name is on every single Batman film. And he purchased the rights, and he wished to make a more defined, dark, serious version of Batman, the way that Bob Kane and Bill Finger had envisioned back in 1939. A creature of the night stalking criminals in the shadows type film. And they just couldn't get it off the ground. They pitched it to several studios, Columbia Pictures, United Artists, and I think they went to every studio in Hollywood, and they all turned it down. But they were interested in making a Batman film, but as I said before, they were more interested in the campy 1960s TV show version of Batman. And so Ursulin decided to write his own screenplay, and he entitled it Return of the Batman, to give the film industry a better idea of his vision of the film. Ursulin later compared its dark tone to that of The Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller graphic novel that came out in the 80s, which his script kind of predated. His script was before that graphic novel had came out. So Michael Ursulin kind of predicted this more darker, brooding Batman before we even got to Frank Miller. Around that time, producers John Peters and Peter Goldberg joined the project. They had previously worked on Superman the movie. And so they were full steam ahead on a Batman film in 1979. They brought this idea, they pitched it to Universal Studios, Universal Pictures rather, and they turned it down. They turned it down, and no other studio was interested in the project. But they decided, okay, Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers did Superman. Let's see if they're interested in a Batman. So Warner Brothers, which I don't know why they didn't go there first, they accepted, and they decided to produce a Batman film. Now, as early as 1983, they began pre-production as far as getting a screenplay written, and it was going to focus on Batman and Dick Grayson's origin, with the Joker and Rupert Thorne as the villains. The Batman was then announced in late 1983, and it was supposed to have a mid 1985 release date with a budget of $20 million, which in 1983 and 84 was astronomical. That's like $100 million today. It is a big budget for a film. Originally, they had wanted an unnamed actor for Batman, and numerous filmmakers were attached to the project at some points throughout the 80s, which included Ivan Reitman, who we may know from Ghostbusters fame. He directed those films. Joe Dante, who directed Gremlins. Now, Ivan Reitman, like I said, directed the 2 Ghostbuster films. He wanted Bill Murray as Batman. Yes, Bill Murray. And he wanted to cast as Robin Eddie Murphy. He wanted Eddie Murphy as Dick Grayson. I don't know. I don't know how that would have played. Of course, in 1980, 83, 84, 85. Eddie Murphy wasn't Eddie Murphy at that point in time. Yes, he was known. He was on SNL. He had at that point he had made was Trading Places. I think Trading Places had came out around that time. But regardless, he was still relatively unknown. 9 rewrites were performed with 9 separate writers. Even at one point, filmmakers had, producers had turned to Wes Craven to direct the Batman film. Horror master Wes Craven. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream franchise, the list goes on and on. That didn't go through. And then in 1985, something happened. Something unexpectedly took place. A little film came out that was just financially successful for Warner Brothers. A huge surprise hit for the studio and got their eyes gravitating to the director of that film. And that film was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And that movie prompted Warner Brothers to hire Tim Burton to direct Batman. Tim Burton had his girlfriend at the time write a 30-page film treatment, feeling that the previous script was campy. And so the success of the graphic novel, The Dark Knight Returns, and the Batman The Killing Joke rekindled Warner Brothers' interest in this film adaptation. Tim Burton was not a comic book fan. He was not. He did not read any comics. He wasn't interested in comics to this day. But he was impressed by the dark and serious turn that both graphic novels, The Killing Joke and Dark Knight Returns, had impressed upon him. So as they progressed through pre-production, Tim Burton had removed the Penguin and Dick Grayson from the screenplay. And so that's why we got introduced to them later on. Now, Burton had approached a comic book fan to write a screenplay, Sam Hamm. And Sam Hamm, only other credit before Batman was Never Cry Wolf. And I remember watching that when I was in school. And that was that movie about the photographer, I think, who went out in the woods. Oh, no, he wasn't a photographer. He was I forgot what he was. I don't know, environmentalist or something, and went to study the wilderness and all this other stuff. But anyway, that was his only writing credit up to this point. And so, but he was a comic book fan that knew Tim Burton. Tim Burton knew he was a comic book fan. So, hey, who better to write this screenplay? And so Sam Hamm decided not to use an origin story, feeling that flashbacks would be more suitable and unlocking the mystery would become part of the storyline. And I couldn't agree more. We didn't need an origin. Just jump in. Let's roll with it. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they did, actually. So we get to the casting of this film. And just like Superman from 1978, Hollywood just went insane. Well, all the A-listers around that time was vying for the role of Bruce Wayne. Some of the names, you have Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Charlie Sheen, Tom Selleck, as I said, Bill Murray, Harrison Ford, Dennis Quaid, just to name a few. They all went out for the role of Batman. Tim Burton was pressured by Warner Brothers to cast an action movie star, somebody who could carry a film. And they had approached Pierce Brosnan, who later on became James Bond. But Pierce Brosnan had zero interest in being a comic book character. He did not want to. I could see Pierce Brosnan. That would have been awesome, actually, because he definitely got the debonair that you need for Bruce Wayne. That is a handsome man. And so to see him as Bruce Wayne would have been awesome. I don't know about him handling the action aspect of it, but once you see the film, it really wasn't much action to handle anyway. But that's besides the point. Um, Tim Burton actually wanted to cast an unknown, but something had happened over a year. He went to film this little movie called Beetlejuice, and he had such a good rapport with the actor who plays Beetlejuice that a bulb went off in his head. That's my Batman. That actor is none other than Michael Keaton. Uh, I don't know what they saw. I don't know what they saw, but they felt this was the guy. And just imagine, this is 1988 around that time when the casting was announced. When they announced that Michael Keaton was cast as Batman, it was pandemonium. Keep in mind, like I said, 1988, 87, 88, somewhere up in there. Everybody lost their minds, and this is before Twitter. This is before Facebook and all this other stuff. This is before internet, period. But people went insane. And I was one of them. I was one of them. And at the time, I was about 11 years old. But I was like, man, I don't see it. Mr. Mom? Really? He's going to be Batman? I just did not picture it, didn't see it. And plus, in the comics, Batman is what, 6'3", 6'4"? Michael Keaton may be 5'9", and I'm giving him 5'9". And I don't see Batman in Michael Keaton. So this started a long tradition of Batman films where everybody loses their mind with some type of cast. I don't care what Batman movie it is, everybody loses their mind. You go to Danny DeVito being cast as the Penguin. You go to Val Kilmer taking over as Batman. George Clooney taking over as Batman. Chris O'Donnell being cast as Robin, even though he looks like he's the same age as Val Kilmer in that movie. You have the controversy surrounding Christian Bale being cast as Batman, because at the time they announced his casting, Christian Bale was fresh off of a movie called The Machinist. I think it was the movie where he was just skin and bones. Literally, he was malnourished, and he was a skeleton with skin on top. Anyway, nah, that can't be Batman. You know, and he ended up putting on the weight, and he was great. The casting of Heath Ledger as Joker. Now this is an internet time. Internet went crazy. Like, Heath Ledger? Nah, this is no. And I was skeptical. I wasn't mad, but I was like, I didn't see Heath Ledger as the Joker. I mean, it's the Joker. Boy, was I wrong. And so on and so Ben Affleck. I mean, every Batman film has controversy. Robert Pattinson as Batman. It doesn't matter. People are going to get mad. And so this started that, I guess you could say, tradition of people going crazy about Batman. I guess when they ever announced the casting of Batman Brave and the Bold, is going to be another tirade on Twitter with millions of people, even though they haven't seen the movie. And so they cast Michael Keaton, whatever. It's, whatever. It got to the point where protest letters were sent to Warner Brothers Studios. Up to 50,000 letters were sent to Warner Brothers offices about the casting of Michael Keaton. Like I said, pre-Twitter. So everybody was mad, but much respect to Warner Brothers and Tim Burton and everybody involved in that film. They stuck to their guns. They said they found their guy. And so he stayed on as Batman. When we move on to the Joker, casting of the Joker. This wasn't as controversial. This was more, I think a lot of people was behind this, more than anything else, and that was the casting of Jack Nicholson. Now, prior to Jack Nicholson joining the cast as Joker, once again, just like the role for Batman, everybody came out for Joker. You had Tim Curry come out in audition, who would have been awesome if you think about him being It, that TV movie, the Stephen King. I was like, okay, he can work in the makeup. He has that. He has that. And a little known fact, before Mark Hamill was cast as Joker in the animated series, Tim Curry voiced Joker. I think in the first episode. It was only one episode. And that was Tim Curry. So he did eventually become Joker, but whatever. David Bowie was in consideration. John Lithgow, Ray Liotta, the late great Ray Liotta, James Woods, they were in consideration. Robin Williams, he lobbied hard for the role, but it fell into the hands of Jack Nicholson. And around that time, I think, me personally, I was on board because I had not too long seen The Witches of Eastwick, and he was a beast in that movie, literally. He was the devil in that movie, and he was amazing in that role. And I was like, well, I can see that. I can see him as Joker. And so the rest of the cast filled out and everything. So we were off and running with this film. The pandemonium in 1989, coming up to the release of this movie, was insane. You saw a bat symbol everywhere. Everywhere you saw a bat symbol. And I guess that's what made my love for Batman grow. At the time, I was cool, but you couldn't help but love Batman. Everybody had a Batman shirt, Batman cups, Batman toys, the promotion at Taco Bell for Batman, the combo meal. Because I still had that cup. That's how I know. I still have my Batman cup from 1989, a promotional cup for that movie. It's at my mom's house. I seen it the other day when I was over there. And so it's still there. All the commercials, everything leading up to this movie. And I remember, around this time, I used to beg my dad to bring me to the movies. And not so much beg, ask, and he, to his credit, he would bring me. But this go around, my brother brought me. And I can't remember if I asked him, begged him, or please, because normally I had to beg my brother. But I think I just asked him. And he brought me. And we sat down in the theater to partake in Batman. Now, just like most films that came out around that time, it's a little dated. It's 1989. It's a film from 1989 if you watch it today. I fully respect that. But I'm giving this review as if you are listening to this in the summer of 1989. Okay? So this is a little biased. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to come straight out front with y'all. So y'all don't have to say it behind my back. I'm saying it to your faces. I'm being a little biased. So we're going back to 1989. Sitting in that theater with the opening scene, and this is when I realized this isn't an origin story. We're not seeing Martha and Thomas getting shot in the alley. Even though it was kind of a fake out when the movie opens up. You see this couple with their young son leaving the theater. They go down this alley, and you're like, okay, this is the origin. But as they go up the alley, you see this silhouette on the roof of Batman. You're like, wait. Wait, this isn't their origin? And they get robbed, and the robbers are on a roof, and they're counting the money and all this here. And one of the robbers is, scared to death because Batman may be around. The other one is like, man, it's a fantasy, it's a myth, whatever. And Batman shows up. And it's Michael Keaton in the cape and the cowl, and he kicks one through the door, and he holds the other one over the ledge, by his collar. And we get the iconic line. So simple, yet delivered so beautifully. The robber asks, "Who are you?" And Michael Keaton delivers it in such perfection. "I'm Batman." And at that moment, everybody who doubted, which is, I would say, 99% of the population who was mad at the casting of Michael Keaton, sat back and said, "I'm sorry." Um, he nailed it. He nailed it. And when we saw Bruce Wayne later on, in a few scenes later, and how it was a different tone, different, the way he walked, the way he carried himself. Another nugget that I wanted to say about Michael Keaton, just like Tim Burton, Michael Keaton didn't read Batman comics. He didn't know anything about Batman in the comics, but he understood the character. He understood that Bruce Wayne was the mask. Batman is him. That's his real person. That's who he is. Bruce Wayne is the gimmick. And so he understood that, even though he didn't read the books. And he emoted that on screen. And he did it perfectly. His stone demeanor, the way he carried himself. Yeah, he was short in stature. And I hate saying that. I cringe when I say that because I'm short. I'm a short fella. But in comparisons to the Batman that we know and love, he's short. But he carried himself like he was 6'6". You know what I'm saying? He was that much of a presence on screen as this character. Jack Nicholson as Joker. He gets lost in the shuffle, I think, in recent times because of the performances of Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix, who both won Academy Awards for playing this same character. Jack Nicholson nailed the character first. All respect to Cesar Romero from the 1960s television show, who did an excellent job as well for that show, for that interpretation of that character. But Jack Nicholson, I think, had the perfect balance of complete silliness and dread. And it's being lost. And honestly, I didn't really get it until I watched it recently, a couple of years ago, should I say. I understood what Jack Nicholson was doing. He was very dark. He has the darkness of Heath Ledger, but he had to balance it out with silliness. And I think, I wish I could have found. I was trying to look it up. This quote that Jack Nicholson had released after the tragic death of Heath Ledger, and I couldn't find it nowhere. I'm not making it up. I know I read it. But anyways, to paraphrase it, he basically said that the role of Joker will drive you crazy. It will, if you really dive into it, face first. Yeah, you would go insane. And he said that his version, he had to balance it out with the silliness in order to kind of keep his mind from going going crazy. And I think, look, that's Joker to me. He's silly yet menacing, very menacing and scary, and it came out perfectly. I think Tim Burton's direction here is great, even though I think it was a little better, his direction-wise, in Batman Returns, because that was more of his film, I think, Batman Returns. This one here was more of the studio pressuring him a lot, but he still did a great job with it. Kim Basinger as Vicki Vale, loved her in this role. She wasn't your typical damsel in distress, even though she was a damsel in distress, but she had a type of script to her that she wasn't just flailing arms running, no, stop, that type of damsel in distress that we saw in films around that time. No, she had a little script to her that was unique for 1989. And I enjoyed her performance. But the MVP of this film is the art department, the set design. Gotham City was a character. Gotham, you felt Gotham City. My knocks with the Nolan trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, as much as I love those films, Gotham City just looked like Chicago. When I looked at it, it just felt like Chicago. Ironically, that's where they filmed the movie at, but it just felt like Chicago. And I wanted Gotham City to feel like another world, this dystopian type world. That's why I enjoyed the Batman, Matt Reeves' version of Gotham City. It was it was his own character, and Tim Burton really made Gotham City stand out in this film. It was dark. I mean, it was like just the blackest of blacks, yet highlighted with the skylines and everything. I loved it. It was like a living, breathing organism. But what does it for me when it comes to Batman from 1989? There's a scene that takes place in this movie that literally changed my life forever. And I'm not saying that, in hyperbole. And not. This is facts. This is an actual fact. I always wanted to be a filmmaker. I always loved movies. Uh, as far back as I can remember, I just love movies. There are certain moments in film, going to the theaters and watching it that just are singed into my brain. The T-Rex coming out of the fence in Jurassic Park is one of those moments. Indiana Jones running from the boulder in Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of those moments. But the number one moment for me that just turned me into the man that I am today came in 1989. I'm sitting in this theater. Batman in the the Batwing steals the Joker's balloons that was unleashing that Smilex gas that was killing everybody. He goes up and releases the balloons in the sky. That's the scene where Jack Nicholson he stole my balloons, which was hilarious to me, still is. And he unleashes the balloons, and he decides to do product placement in the middle of this battle with the Joker. He flies through these clouds, and he gets over the top of the clouds, and he stops right in front of the moon, and you have the silhouette of the bat wing across the moon, and it's the bat signal, you know what I'm saying? And it just fell back down through the clouds. And at that moment, I started to cry. And this was the first time I cried out of sheer emotion. I cried earlier with Transformers the movie when Optimus Prime died. That was the first time I ever cried in a movie theater. And I cried because I was sad. This was the first time I actually wept with joy. I was like, oh my God. I mean, I cannot get over that scene. And every time I watch this movie, I'm getting goosebumps. Every time I watch this movie, I get the same feeling. I feel, well, at least I felt when I was 12 years old, sitting in the United Artists Theater in my hometown and watch this movie, sitting in the middle, sitting like 5 or 6 rows back. I remember what seat I was in, and I saw this, and I was just blown away by that. But the rest of the movie was amazing. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed, even though they changed it from the comics, with Joker having an origin story, he has a name and all this. Here, we don't get that in the comics. Joker is just Joker. It's implied he's this, he's that, he's this throughout, depending on which issue or what do you determine as canon. But he doesn't have an origin story like that. Maybe if you go with the Killing Joke, fine. But other than that, he really doesn't have a origin. and he definitely didn't kill Batman's parents, but in the comics. But they did that for the film. Fine, that's fine. It worked for this story. My knocks on the film, and I do have them. As much as I love and adore this movie, the action was not all that good. Of course, Michael Keaton is not known as an action star. He's not at that point, but they did the best they could. It was all right, but it wasn't Batman. Batman is one of the most skilled fighters in the world. He knows every form of martial arts, and it's just uh, whatever. Whatever. I gotta knock it for that. Like I said, some of the changes they made from the comics was kind of like, you know, but it worked. It worked for the most part. I enjoyed this movie. Still to this day, it is still regarded as, or still is regarded as, one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. Definitely the greatest Batman of all time, Michael Keaton. Can't wait to see him in the Flash. But Batman from 1989 gets a letter grade of an A minus. I love this movie. As I said before, I'm being biased with this movie, but this is it still warms my heart to watch this movie. This movie was made for $48 million. It went on to gross $411 million. Of course, you got to adjust that for inflation. It's probably double that, but excellent. It spawned 3 more sequels. Only one where Michael Keaton returned, and that was Batman Returns in 1992, and Tim Burton returned to direct that as well. But after that, both of them left, and Batman Forever in 1995 starred Val Kilmer and directed by Joel Schumacher, as well as Batman and Robin in 1997, which starred George Clooney as Batman and also directed by Joel Schumacher. I didn't mind Batman Forever, but the less said about Batman and Robin, the better. So everybody, that's the show today. We have went through the history of the Flash and all of the iterations that popped up on television and in film in honor of the film The Flash, which drops in theaters right now, June the 16th. Should be a fun time in the theater. But I want to know, are you excited for The Flash? Are you excited to see how this will kind of reset the DC universe? Because this is what the reports are saying, that we all know the stories, but if you don't know, I'm about to tell you. James Gunn is now the head of DC Studios, and we're about to get a whole new crop. This is starting over. We're not getting Henry Cavill as Superman. The Zack Snyderverse is over and done with, so we're starting over. And this is supposed to be the film that started over, and this is the perfect one for it. You know, Flashpoint in a sense, and kind of rebooting the universe. And we're getting a new Superman in a couple of years. Actually, they started casting. Well, they are holding auditions for a new Superman, and we're going to get a new Batman, and so on and so forth. So this is supposed to restart the universe. Are you looking forward to this film, and how are they going to pull everything off? Do you think Ezra Miller will stay on as the Flash? Do you think that Ben Affleck will come back as Batman? I'm hearing some whispers that he might come back. Fingers crossed. I would like to know what your thoughts are. You can email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also look me up on Twitter at the KB Radio Network, and on other social media platforms. Just look up the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever it is you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network, and as well as YouTube. Don't forget about subscribing to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube and giving this video a like. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this Flash edition, this Super Speedster edition, the Scarlet Speedster edition of movie goodness. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Father's Day and Juneteenth. I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.